Well, hello. Welcome to this week's Cat Chat. And just to introduce myself, my name is Andrew. I'm from the Career Center. I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves as well.
Okay. I'm Cheryl Talafer. I'm a psychology intern at the Counseling Services.
And I'm Ashley Motley. I'm an assistant director at the Career Center, and I liaison with the undergrads in arts and sciences.
So perfect. Thank you for being here, whether in person or online. We know that everyone has busy schedules, so we appreciate you interacting with us however you are today. So this kind of presentation today is timed appropriately because breaks are coming, semester midterms are happening right now, vacations are coming up, and so you're going to be going home and you're going to be hearing a lot of the questions, a lot of, if you haven't already, about how's your semester going, what are you doing with your future, why did you select your major. And so especially, and I'm going to focus more on this I think in my portion, but with the Thanksgiving break and the winter break coming up, I mean there's going to be lots of influences coming after you or asking a lot of questions from there. So that's kind of what I'm going to be going through with this. Just to kind of start off a little bit, making career decisions, and I don't know if you're a transfer student, a first-time freshman, or so forth. Whatever stage you're coming in as a student here at K-State, there's always going to be that, why did you choose this? Why are you wanting to pursue this certain profession and so forth? And so it can obviously be confusing. It can obviously be overwhelming. And so, with this, it kind of shows, career decision making is of critical importance as every student needs to choose his or her major when he applies for college or the university. And so that's kind of the way that universities are set up, is that you come in thinking you're going to have one major. When you come for enrollment days, you're kind of pushed with this college and this college to enroll, and it's like, all this build up, and then boom, we kind of herd you into almost these silos of, what's appropriate for you based on what you've already deemed as, this is what I want to do. But we all know that, we're young. We don't have all that experience. We don't have all of the answers quite in place yet. And so things change. Choices change, decisions change. Just your exposure to one class will possibly change your whole outlook and decision making. And so very, very big decisions.
Just want to add
something. Please.
So just to add something, that's okay. Just to add a little bit onto this is that sometimes when we make career decisions, we get overwhelmed because we're trying to pick, okay, which one resonates more with me, And of course, we hear all the background noises as well, whether it's from family, peers, and so forth. So when it comes to making decisions, and that's why it's considered, it's very important, when you first come to college, you're trying to feel your way around, okay? So just something to add in to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is just kind of more of a little reflection. We're going to have a couple questions throughout this presentation, but you have to think, what steps have you taken so far as students here at K-State towards making your career decisions? Have you talked to a professor? Have you been exposed to a certain industry? Have you been matched with a mentor? What steps have you taken, or what resources have been available to you or approached you in making these career decisions? And I mean, we do have a guest, and so would you mind if I ask you, what are some steps that you've taken? And I can just repeat what you share with us too. So, but what steps have you taken? What have been presented to you? Well, I was just going to repeat it, so I wouldn't put her on the spot. Is that okay? So she said the Career Center, so that's perfect. Okay, so then actually taking advantage of the electronic resources that are available and actually going and selecting kind of major planning, really, like based on your interests, seeing the required classes and everything as well. So those are two amazing steps to take that I think maybe some students haven't done so far yet,
Use drop-in? Did you use drop-in advising, or did you get to meet with an assistant director or a career advisor one-on-one? Okay, so when she stopped by the Career Center, she utilized the drop-in advising that we have Monday through Thursdays. Cool.
But that's great, and then, that's a great example of taking advantage of resources. And I think that you are very proactive in taking advantage of those and planning. And other students, kind of as I mentioned before, they'll get through the doors, they'll get enrolled, and then they'll just kind of, the whole transition, everything else is so overwhelming that they don't know to go online and plan, or maybe even don't even know that they have an academic advisor, and so I think I teach a class here at K-State, and one of my first requirements within the first couple of weeks is to touch back with their academic advisor, learn who their academic advisor is, reach out to that academic advisor, because there are so many resources, and Ashley is going to be talking about some of the more specific offices geared towards some of that. But I mean, congratulations, you've done a great job. And so I guess, as you're watching this online, perhaps in the future, just take a little bit of time to stop and think, maybe even write out a couple things of what have you personally done to make career decisions, to inquire even about career possibilities in your future here at K-State. So.
I want to look at some influential factors. Sorry. Okay, so now we're going to look at different influential factors that impact decision making. And oftentimes we hear different things, whether it's from family, the community, peers, and some of the things that I've come across, follow the family tradition. There are no other options. You have no excuse. We depend on you. Make us proud. I'm just curious, with the individual who's here today with us, have you heard any of these? I'm cutting.
I've heard people recommending oh, you should really do this major or career field. I'm not sure anything particularly specific you have to. None of my relatives have really said anything like that, but to an extent, yeah.
Okay. So it depends on who or how they say it. Okay. And when you hear things like this, does it drive the anxiety or what's going on?
Yeah, it makes me kind of nervous. Well, that's nice, but that's not really what I want to do. I don't want to upset you, but sorry.
So that's where some of the noises come in, right? Which can make it overwhelming, right? Okay, thank you. So, okay, so we've heard from one of our volunteer here what her experience has been like. And I'm sure there are many other students who feel the same way or heard the same thing in terms of whether it's from family, whether it's from even the community, because which will be individual later on, if you go back home, what are some of the things that you hear? What major are you choosing? You haven't decided yet? What's going on? So yeah, it can be very anxiety provoking, okay? Other things that we're going to look at, which brings us to the video.
So I like to kind of bring in some exaggerated circumstances of what could happen. And so I have this little video that I'm popping up here. I am going to pause it though because it is an SNL skit. So if you'd like to preview this a little bit more on your own, you're definitely welcome to. It was right after this, I think. Yeah. Okay. So this is just a little fun skit, SNL, about going home for Thanksgiving. Let's enlarge it. There we go.
Taking out the trash on my neighbors spot me. They swarm around me like my own paparazzi. Talking and stalking, they can't get enough of me. Wondering, questioning, what's going on with me?
So what's going on with you?
The same.
Okay, Jean. Bye.
So that was a really short clip, and I'm sorry that it wasn't loud enough for everyone, technology things here. But I mean, the gist of it was, though, that, these interactions happen. This is, of course, exaggerated, maybe not. Maybe this will actually really happen with your neighbor. But I think it's just important to realize, that everyone's going to be going through these awkward almost situations. And so part of then reflecting back to, what do you hear, what have you done on your own here at K-State to seek out that career decision, to seek out that career help. Ashley and myself are from the Career Center, and so, I kind of share this as when you prep for an interview, you're doing that research on that company, you're getting prepared with, the awards, with any kind of recognitions that company's gotten. And so it's kind of the same thing with, as you're dealing with these different voices and scenarios, think back to the research that you've done on your career choice or on your career decisions. And then, you gain confidence by knowing, well, I know the job outlook for this major. I know what careers are possible. I know, if this is a market that's going to be growing in the next couple of years or not. And so I think, emboldening yourself with those facts, doing that research, then when you are approached with these different voices, and maybe it's, whatever her name was in the video, a neighbor or so forth, you kind of have that background for you.
And I just wanted to add to that, I think the other thing to consider is that throughout our adult lifetime, the question of our identity and how we would define and describe ourselves is always going to be a thing. It's not just in college where people ask you, so what are you going to do? Or what are you about? Or what do you like? I think throughout the rest of your family holiday experiences, you will continue to hear, so what do you do? And anytime you meet a new friend in your adult circle, so what do you do? I think that's really a cultural attachment that we put onto people and define them by their career choices. And so something that you can, and certainly Cheryl's going to get into this a little more too, but something that you can do to kind of counter that narrative, if you will, is say, so here are some of the things that I'm interested in studying, but here are some of the hobbies and the interests that I have that make me feel like a well-balanced individual. And you can kind of share how you like to spend some of your free time, or maybe what some of your other interests are, or some of those other identity hats that you wear, So when somebody asks me for an example, what do you do? I like to talk a little bit about the work I do at K-State as a career advisor, but I also like to say, I'm the mom of a 4-year-old really active preschooler, and she keeps me going, and I like to put my PTO hat on, and I like to spend a lot of time in my friend circle looking at opportunities to help with things like connecting women in the community to resources that they need through one of the service organizations I belong to, So I like to talk about those identities too. So something to think about as you kind of balance the narrative.
So something else that we would like to add here, which ties in with other influential factors. So we have two different journal articles I'm presenting today 2 different journal articles. And with one of them, it focused on how individuals' choice of career is likely to be influenced by several factors, which includes personal and cultural values, family background, career expectations, career guidance. And Lee explained or discussed 2 categories of how these barriers fall into. So you have the interpersonal barriers and the environmental barriers. So when you hear interpersonal values, you're talking about within. So that's whether the self-confidence, the self-esteem, the lack of interest in maybe a career choice that you selected, and negative self-perception. So when we feel that we're not fulfilling, whether it's your parents' expectations or so forth, we often revert to negative thinking about ourselves. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing what my parents expect me to do, or I'm not meeting society's expectations, And that can actually bring us down, to the point where it can be anxiety-driven when it comes to test taking, because you have on your mind, if I don't pass this test, what's going to happen? If you have parents that check in with you and ask, how are you doing on your test? Or how are you doing with your grades? That can be overwhelming too. So that's some of the factors that drive into the intrapersonal. When it comes to environmental, apart from family, we're also looking at community. If you come from a community that's very close-knit and that has your best interest, of course, going back to the tape, They will want to check in, like, how are you doing in school? What's new going on? Have you selected a major yet? You know? And then that will lead you thinking like, oh boy. It makes you feel stuck sometimes because you don't know how to respond to that. And that's where these voices are coming in as well. Apart from that, financial problems, right? Finance is huge. School can be expensive, yes. And I think that also, that can be another voice too. That's also something that can affect how or what career path we want to select, right? So those are the difference between the interpersonal and the environmental barriers. Would you like to add anything to that?
Just one other thing that I think about when you think about environmental barriers is that, you know, whatever college you choose to attend and, you know, you make sure it's a good fit and everything. But, you know, for instance, we're here at Kansas State University. And so when you go back home, you know, what Kansas State University means to you can be a lot different than what it meant to them. And so when you go back home, they might be totally disinterested in what you are doing personally, but they want to know about things that they were involved in. And so, you know, if they were an athlete, they want to know, so how's the football team going? You know, how's the volleyball team going right now? You know, and no care about your academic discipline, your major, even things in the news right now. So, you know, if there's things happening at K-State that's been in the media, they're like, oh, so you've been seeing a lot of this, or have you been doing a lot of that? And so sometimes even you have to be prepared not only to answer your own, you know, future plans and what your happenings are, but also you are that spokesperson for the university in your small little hutch or niche area because you're the only one they know at Kansas State. And so, you know, those are definitely environmental issues, barriers, if you will, to deal with and to also look for, you know. And so this is just kind of a model then that kind of just reinforces what we talked about, you know, talking about college readiness with that family support, with the finances. We all know about the financial barriers, financial burdens, hurdles that we're all dealing with. So not only are we, you know, dealing with our own career decisions, our own career outlooks and the voices, but then also, you know, ultimately that financial aspect of our educations here.
And also to keep in mind too, when it comes to like, when we're talking about cultural values or cultural norms, we also look at gender roles, you know, like I know, like say for example, in the engineering field, you know, I guess that there's certain expectations and then that put a lot of pressure, you know, on the individual. And then that leads them to question, okay, am I making the right career choice? You know, am I going on a right? Am I going on the right track? You know, so all of this to consider how it impacts the interpersonal, or the intrapersonal, I should say. Okay, so this is just some statistics. So when it comes to, again, types of factors, when we look at this, 35% actually career stability, that tends to impact. Because when you first come to college, you're still undecided, not sure which way to go. Yes, you already, you know, you might speak to your parents, they might tell you, okay, you should do this, you should do this. But when you come here, like, oh, so many options, right? Followed by academia. Academic stress can be stressful. You know, so it's like meeting deadlines for papers, performing well on your tests. Even if if you feel that you're struggling with a class, you know, maybe not sure of which resources that's available, that can make it difficult. Followed by mentors. So what this person, Coach, had mentioned about mentors is that individuals who, so the mentors would basically give them ideas of, okay, this is where I can see you fit, just giving the information. But then the communication or the perception might be different as well. So with what the mentors are providing, they can also influence how an individual decide which career path they want to go. Peers, fun stuff, right? So oftentimes there are individuals, I know it's not so fun, but oftentimes there are individuals who want to be in the same field as their friends, you know? So that's where another pressure is coming in. Followed by family members. I know it's hard to see 5%. I know it look like it should be more, but family members, yes, they can put a lot of pressure on us. You know, they have our best interests. I give them that. But also, when it comes to, like, have you decided to do this yet? Do you know which path you want to go? It can be stressful at the same time, which can also affect what career path you want to go, okay?
Yeah, no problem. So just to add a little bit more onto that is, every student's going to be coming in with their own situation, their own influences, distractions, if you will, almost as well. And so, I talked about people's different identities, whether they identify as a student athlete, as a non-traditional student, part of the LGBTQ. I mean, each influence or each attachment or to the cohort that they're with, though, is going to come with their own set of distractions. And so, she mentioned a couple influences, major ones, statistically that have shown. But, just think, like when you find a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a partner, when, something totally unrelated, some new interest just kind of pops up and can be totally distracting as well. And so, that showed statistic-wise, but this is college, and for a lot of people, this can be the first kind of freedom that they've experienced. And so all these new things, it's like, you're looking and there's this field of shiny objects and you're like, oh, what's that? What's that? What's that? You're so overexposed. And so definitely many, many types of factors for that.
Yeah. So I was just going to build on what Andrew was saying too and say, but there's nothing wrong with that exposure. And I think one of my all-time favorite career development theories is called happenstance. I don't know if you've ever heard of happenstance, but basically that theory kind of says that it's all kind of grounded in what we call chaos theory, and that basically is that our career path is really truly shaped by the people that we interact with that open doors and new possibilities to us. And so when we talk about resources in a minute, I'll kind of talk about what even a conversation about happenstance could look like. But being exposed to a new interest or a new idea is actually a lot more what career planning looks like than a linear line. I always say it looks more like spaghetti than a really clean, neat linear line on a graph. And so we may kind of get distracted from our initial career ideas, and that's totally normal, and it's totally fine, because as we have these new ideas, what I think is important is that we talk about them, and that we kind of hash them out and look at the pros and cons of these new ideas and how do they fit with the big macro picture of some of the initial career ideas we had. So I think it's okay. It's okay to have them, and it's just important to talk about them.
Which brings us to our next question. Who or what influenced your decision making? I'm coming.
Okay, I guess just like generally just trying to figure out like different classes, like, oh gosh, do I like this or do I not like this? Or then looking into like, will I be able to get a job if I major in this? Or like, I like, that sounds like a nice job, but will I like the classes that I have to take to get that job? So, yeah.
So it sounds like a little bit of finance, a little bit of academic. Yeah. Okay. So those are few influential factors. Okay. Would you like to add? Okay. Well-being. Okay. So I had touched a little bit on this, and I'm sure we have also touched a little bit on this earlier. So when we're experiencing challenges with making decisions, it often affects our emotional, physical, and mental well-being, right? Like I mentioned before, it creates feeling depressed, stress, anxiety. Ms. Andrew touched on this earlier, relationship issues as well. So when it comes to making a decision, we talked about the lack of interest. So that's one of the signs of depression. You know, you become, it also impacts the self-esteem. It also impacts the confidence when you're uncertain. And when you're hearing all the background, like, okay, what's going on? Yeah, it makes you want to isolate yourself at times. When it comes to feeling stressed, it can also trigger the anxiety level as well. But then your heart beating really fast, your mind is racing, you're worrying, which ties in with the anxiety, you know. And then when it comes to relationship, you know, we all have family, we have significant others. So when we're finding ourselves stressed out, it can impact our relationship with others as well. Okay?
Sure. I think, you know, there's how all these decisions affect our well-being, but I think kind of like our student participant out here has said, you know, the different factors, you know, I think the well-being, I mean, ultimately you want to be happy in your occupation. You want to be enjoying what you're doing every single day. And so I think for some of our students, that realization might not come until maybe their end of their second or beginning of their third year, because that's kind of when more of that industry exposure comes into play, especially like internships. I've had students, multiple students, who have been in a major, went and did a job shadowing or an internship experience, and then realized, no way, this is absolutely not what I want to do. I am not going to get contentment, enjoyment out of doing this occupation. And so that can definitely be an eye-opening experience as well. And then, you know, that anxiety comes in a whole different way, because, you know, you've had X amount of years studying this and with this plan, and with just one little thing, disruption, it can totally start over again. And so, again, Ashley will talk about campus resources that will address that a little bit more, but I think just the more you know going into it, the more of that research that we talked about before will definitely help set you up to anticipate, if not be able to very well meet those barriers that possibly come up. Sorry.
So now we need to find ways to break these barriers. So we know that having family support can go a long way, because it can put your mind at ease. You know, you can decide without feeling regret or feeling guilty. When it comes to peer support, that can also be helpful, you know, because there can be some acknowledgement, okay, I can see that you're stressed, but I can be here to give you that support, you know. Also, support from professors. Oftentimes we might feel scared to talk to a professor if we're experiencing a struggle or a problem. But when we talk to professors, at least you get an idea of, okay, what path you need to go on, how I can resolve whatever academic stress that I'm experiencing with this, whether it's with a test or whether it's with the coursework. And then also being aware of accessible resources here on K-State. Being aware of these resources can take you a long way as well, because you have that close-knit community resources on campus. And oftentimes, we don't know where these resources are, which Ms. Ashley will give us a snapshot of what they look like.
Okay, all right. So when I talk about career planning with my students, I like to kind of explain that you can basically break it down into 4 different phases, and that's kind of what we teach at the Career Center. And so when we're talking about getting ready for your career, the first thing that we have to do as individuals is really know thyself. So that first phase of career planning and management is really just some self-assessment. And a lot of times that can either be formal assessment, meaning we help you identify your workplace values. Are you interested in more autonomy in your work, more teamwork in your work? Are you an extrovert? Are you an introvert? How does that affect your energy during the day? What are your other strengths? And then what specifically do you want to go to work doing each day? Serving people, creating, working outside, working in business. And so all of our more formal assessment that helps gauge kind of where you are with some of those different things happens either in counseling services, so you can set up an appointment there to do a deeper dive into some of those different factors. Or if you're not sure if you're ready for a deep dive, but you want some exposure to what your work values and interests might be, you can start at the Career Center and utilize our Explore floor, which is on the top floor of the Bernie Family Welcome Center. So you can walk right up there, make an appointment to meet with a peer educator, actually, who will walk you through a career assessment. And then the next kind of phase of career planning is really where once we know ourselves a little bit better and what we're looking for in our work, then we can move into sort of doing some more research on the different industries out there that do match those work values and that do line up with those strengths. And having someone guide you through that is super helpful, because there are some pretty hefty resources out there for trying to make those matches happen. And so the Career Center on the first floor, coming to have an appointment with your career advisor, so the kind of work that Andrew and I do is really helpful in that research phase. But sometimes what can happen in that research phase is that we get overwhelmed and overexposed to all those different choices again, and we kind of get stuck making a decision. And when that happens, what Andrew and I can do, and the rest of our colleagues in the Career Center, is to help maybe make another referral back to counseling services, because at that point it might be a little bit more conversation that needs to happen about the decision-making process, like if you're feeling stuck moving forward with actually making that happen. Because sometimes it's not about having enough information, it's about feeling kind of stuck in that decision-making process. So our friends at the Counseling Center really, really help a lot in regards to that, as well as some of those other environmental factors, like talking through some of those family conversations that pop up. And then the third kind of phase of career planning, once we've moved out of career research and you feel like you've gathered some good information and you're entering decision-making mode and you have identified where you want to go in the long term, what we do a lot of in the Career Center is then help you think about, if you know where you want to go in the long term, where are you now? And what does the gap look like between where are you now and where you want to go? And then what do you need to fill that gap with? So what are your next steps? Do we need to help you connect with a practicum or an internship experience? Is an undergrad research opportunity going to expose you more to your industry of interest? Or do you need to go do some shadowing? Or maybe we teach you how to do an informational interview, which is essentially a reverse interview where you're going to go ask professionals about their work. And that is a tool we like to use a lot in that kind of phase of career planning. Sometimes in that same phase, we get stuck with academic barriers, like Cheryl talked about. And we really want to move in a certain direction, like maybe picking a health profession, but we aren't making the grades that we need to be able to move that career path forward. And then we have the choice of either maybe utilizing some help with the Academic Achievement Center or working in tandem with the Career Center and academic advisor to pick a like but different career path that meets those academic abilities, where you are. And then the Office of Student Life can also help during that part of career planning, because some of those other environmental factors, like maybe not having support if you're a non-traditional student to be able to take some of the classes you need to progress that career path after you've done that research, perhaps they're there to help connect you with some of the resources for our non-traditional students or for our veteran students that need some additional support in understanding how they could translate their military experience and background and maybe interact with academics on campus while even having to be concerned about possibly getting deployed if you are still active and not veteran. There are great resources through the Office of Student Life for a number of different things, and it's a great just kind of one-stop place if you're not sure what other office to utilize next. But the kind of the moving into the third and then the fourth phase of career planning, the third phase is kind of then taking those experiences you've had on campus, being involved or being in those practicum experiences, and then learning how to tell your story. So learning how to talk about what's been transferable and kind of making sense essentially of all those experiences you've had and what's going to pique the interest of employers. And that's why the Career Center can help you write your resume and make sense of those experiences in a cover letter and do a mock interview and learn to kind of tell your story. And the last phase of career planning that we really help you with is connecting then in person a lot of times to employers and organizations that are coming onto campus through some of the different signature events that we do. And so that is kind of the full spectrum of career readiness and planning, and different resources sometimes have to be utilized along the way depending on what your own unique and individual experience is. And everyone's experience with career planning and management, kind of those readiness steps, they certainly look different. And throughout our adult lifetime, we'll cycle back through them likely because as we enter transition as an adult, as we maybe grow a family, or we move, or we experience grief and loss, or celebration in our lifetime, all of those things can really affect needing to rethink what our values and our strengths are at the time and kind of reset that whole process of career planning.
Just to add what Ms. Ashley has said earlier, in terms of with the counseling services, it helps you develop different tools that you can use to manage the academic stress, the anxiety, the depression, or whatever other factors that are stemming from making career choices. It also allows you to process what that experience is like. Sometimes we just need to vent. And when we vent, we feel a little bit better, right? So it provides you with that room where you can do that, where you can try to make sense of what's going on and how things are connected with each other. So just to give you a snapshot of something else that the counseling services provide.
And throughout this presentation, we've talked a lot about, external factors, influences, distractions, and, these are just a few of the resources that we've highlighted. I mean, I know we mentioned, for instance, financial stress. We have PowerCap Financial, who has their SALT program. If you do identify with a specific group, I mean, we have different resources that are connected with those cohort groups as well. And so just, whenever I talk about K-State as a whole, I always think, just think if you've ever moved in your lifetime, or in the future when you move to a new place for your first job, what are you going to do? What do you do to get connected to things in the community? You need to know where the grocery store is. You need to know where the police department is. You need to know, I don't know, where to buy fun things at, and certain things. It's just like, when you join the K-State family, you are joining a community. And so, part of it is knowing what's available, but the other part is, taking that responsibility to go out and seek some of these resources as well. And so we're definitely highlighting some, but, here at on the K-State campus, we have multiple resources to help you with all of these things. And so just wanted to highlight that a little bit more. So really, I mean, just kind of going back and seeing, hopefully from this, you've learned a few maybe resources, or, or even just to normalize your whole experience that you're feeling. You're not alone, definitely, if you're feeling the stress or overwhelming, or, these different voices. I mean, obviously that's why we're having a session about it, because it's a concern. It's happening to all of us. Do you have things to add to that?
You said it well, Mr. Andrew, and I would like to know if you would like to add anything to this, or give like an example. No? Okay.
Yeah, if we wanted to come and set up an appointment like at the Career Center to talk to one of you, or at the Counseling Services Center to talk to you, could we just like walk in and set up an appointment with that? Is that how you go about that?
I'm going to show you the website, and I'll show you the Career Center, and then Cheryl can show you what the Counseling Center, or talk you through that appointment process looks like. So if you're on the Career Center website, now we actually utilize our handshake software, which which is like your one-stop online portal, basically for all things career readiness via the Career Center as a student at K-State. So you would just hit student login, and then you would actually sign in with your EID and password. However, on the back end, I'm going to show you what it looks like. So one thing we have noticed is that students have trouble logging in if they Google Handshake K-State. So you do want to make sure you go to the Career Center landing page to hit that login button. And if you're seeing anything other than a prompt to sign in with your EID, you're probably in the wrong place. But you can always call our office. Phone number's right on that homepage.
And if you would like, help like just doing this whole process, please feel free to come into our office. We have computers there, and our student workers and any staff member will gladly walk you through the process.
So if we look actually at what a student's going to see, when you're in your initial setup of your Handshake profile, you're going to see something like this. And if you were to hover over here, click on Career Center, you could hit Appointments. And then you could just hit Schedule a New Appointment. And then you would get to kind of choose your type of appointment. And so if you were like doing a job search, you could just hit Job or Internship. And then you would actually be able to go through and find availability for the advisor's calendar. And wow, Mary Ellen is quite booked up. And so sometimes what happens too is if you are having trouble finding availability, we would also just take a phone call from you and be able to figure out a better time for you to come in. And sometimes Handshake has been experiencing a few hiccups because it's new software. So again, walk in or give us a call if you feel like something's not normal and you're having trouble setting up an appointment. What's kind of neat about Handshake is that you can actually do some jobs research. This is where you find on-campus job opportunities that can help expose you to some of your interests. And it kind of utilizes that big data that software like Spotify uses. So the more you interact with it, the more it's going to recommend different internship or job opportunities to you. And what's nice is it kind of approaches it from the values lens as well. So if you're interested in living in a city with great work environments or one of the fastest growing city or a place where there's innovative companies, that might be a new way to approach your internship or your career search while thinking about your other work values. So as we have those conversations with you as a student, Handshake kind of comes in helpful in that way. But I'll let Cheryl kind of talk now about how to schedule with the counseling center.
Thank you. So at the counseling services, you can walk in and schedule an appointment at the front desk, or I believe you can also contact the counseling services to schedule an appointment. And just to let you know, your first 4 sessions are free. Free is good. Okay, so and also the counseling services not only offer individual but also group. So if you're an individual who would like to, who feel that you can benefit from a group process, that's something that's also offered at the counseling services. Let me see, what is it? Yes, so the counseling services is located in the English and Counseling Services building, which is right across from the leisure at an angle hall. Hale, right across from the library. So we're located on the 2nd floor, okay?
Yep. And just to reiterate, the Career Center is now located in the Bernie Family Welcome Center. Have you been? Yep. Our student guest has been. Very cool. Which is going to be the Old West Stadium that's right there between the Alumni Center and Ahern. So the Career Center is in the north end of the Bernie Family Welcome Center. Yeah. Do you have any other questions? Is our student guest here? Cool. All right.
So there's also something else that I would like to add. Sometimes when we experience significant distress and we really need to talk to someone, we also have walk-ins between office hours 8 to 5. Okay, so just to let you know. All right. And for more information with the counseling services, you can always go on the website and check out the different upcoming events that's coming up or additional resources as well. Thank you.